Well, it's 7 o'clock now. I've got to start, haven't I? Okay. Well, I'm doing this. This is the first of hopefully a series of. Thank you for that, Heart. A series of little videos I'm going to do about influences, primarily influences on me as a painter, and I've chosen my favorite one at the moment. It's Edward Hopper. I just got a comment from my wife who's up in the house, and I'm here in the studio in the freezing cold recording this. Yes, so Edward Hopper, one of my favorite artists, and one of my favorite paintings of that artist is Nighthawks, and I'm sure you all know it. It's been reproduced again and again and copied by many artists and reinterpreted and used as a kind of a way to influence film sets all over, and it's a priceless bit of Americana, and it's no wonder it's such a favorite. But we'll start about start just with a little bit about Hopper himself. He's sort of known as an American realist painter, although he kind of saw himself as an impressionist, which I kind of wonder at really. Was he really an impressionist? I suppose, yeah, it could. You stretch the term away from uh, the French school of painting, of impressionism. It doesn't look like it, but maybe it's the same kind of thought process going into it. He was also a printmaker and an illustrator. He was born in 1882 uh, to a comfortably off family. He didn't want for anything. I'm not sure if they were particularly rich, but they were comfortably off. He was born in New York State in a place called Nyack, and of a strict Baptist family. And I think you can see some of that way of thinking coming through in his paintings. Once you know it, you can start sort of think, oh yeah, well, yeah, I can see that kind of influence in his life. He was an intellectual type of person. He had an intellectual bent. He loved French and Russian culture. And the artistry in him seems to have come through his mother's side. And so she, she encouraged his art, and they sent him to art school, and he was tutored by some pretty good uh, good art teachers. For example, Robert Henri. I think that was an affectation. His name, the family name, wasn't really Henri. It was some other kind of name. It was changed due to some sort of uh, incident in his father's life, where his father shot somebody. Actually, I was reading about it. It's been fascinating, sort of researching all this stuff. Just to talk about the one painting, but more about Robert Henri later. Also, William Merritt Chase. So you can look him up if you like. And he kind of became an illustrator, and he worked for magazines and advertising agencies, but apparently he hated it. But you can see that he got his painting chops through through all the work that he did. You can see it in you can see some of his illustration work. You can see that he could draw very, very well. Um, and he did well. He was kind of got caught by the like everybody else at the time, by the Great Depression in 1928, didn't it start? But he actually didn't do too badly through the Great Depression, which is some feat for an artist, I can tell you. But he married his wife, Josephine Niverson, who was an artist in her own right. She had her own exhibitions. She was an actress too, but she kind of took charge of his career, and she got him his first show at the Brooklyn Museum, and he kind of went stratospheric after that. I mean, that was in 1923 or 24. So he did such a good job. I've just been reminded to start this live video, but I thought I'd already started. I think I am. Yeah, so she took charge of his career and was actually his principal model throughout his life as well. Um, and then she seemed to have subordinated her own career to that. I mean, I looked up her work, and it's good, but it isn't sort of seminal, I suppose. That's what can be said about it. It's very accomplished. Okay, but and he didn't have his first solo show until 37, which is quite sort of quite advanced, really. I think he'd been sort of preoccupied with just trying to earn money. And it seems somehow she was the catalyst that made it all work out for him, which is great. He actually was a celebrated poster artist as well. He produced a World War One poster which won a competition. Um, he was a modest uh, man, and he wasn't given to spending sprees. When he got his money, he didn't just sort of he didn't just blow it. Like you kind of get the impression that people expect artists to just be completely profligate and just live the life of Riley while they can, and then end up destitute and poverty stricken in their garrets. No, he wasn't like that. He was frugal, and they ate even when they had money in fairly sort of modest, cheap restaurants. And I presume that's why he liked that diner so much. That would have been just the kind of place that he would have frequented. And they were both content to be like that, Edward and Joe. And he lived in the same and worked in the same apartment uh, in Manhattan. From I've got my notes here from 1913 until his death in 1967. So no sort of great spending. He used to carry buckets of coal up, was it 4 flights of stairs, to put into the stove that heated his studio. So there's lot to be admired about this man as well, because he was he planned ahead. I think this is the kind of this Protestant work ethic that people talk about, isn't it? This Baptist upbringing. Uh, well, not that I know much about that, but you would kind of expect that, I think. Uh, so let me just go through. So we'll go through and start talking about the painting now. So if I just come out of this, right, here it is. And look at me, I've gone all small, and I'm in an Edward Hopper painting. Uh, so this is a painting that's influenced me, and uh, I suppose we could start out with just the plan of the painting. It, it's nicely sort of divided up into thirds for a start. The colours are, uh, how would you say, harmonious with each other. They're not gaudy or bright. They're subdued. The whole painting is a subdued painting, and this was painted while World War II uh, had just got going. This was painted in 1942, and maybe that accounts for the somber atmosphere in this painting. It's like a psychological drama, isn't it? But those people must be thinking in there, while I think America was actually not doing too well in the war. The Battle of Midway hadn't happened, so the tide hadn't turned, and the Axis forces were just pushing all before them in the Pacific, and things weren't going terribly well in Europe either. So maybe that accounts for the somber attitude. Um, the painting is actually quite big. I've seen this painting. I was at the retrospective exhibition in uh, in the Tate Modern in London in 2004, and I saw the painting. It's 5 foot wide, uh, two and a half, uh, near between 2.5 and 3 foot in height, and it's quite big and impressive. And I was kind of surprised at that. I was surprised at the size of the paintings. I thought they'd be smaller and more tightly painted, but they weren't as tightly painted as I thought they were. Because if you're ever seeing them in printed material in magazines and on the internet, everything looks sort of really refined because it's been reduced down very small. Uh, but I was surprised and sort of heartened, in fact, to know that it wasn't as finely wrought as I thought it was going to be. Um, so yes, the all the characters are placed sort of on that sort of around that third division on the right. So I'm not sure whether it conforms to the golden ratio at all, or just the sort of the photographer's rule of thirds type of thing. But they're placed so your eye is drawn into them, into that sort of warm yellow wedge shape that is on the right, and everything else is kind of cool, I suppose. Um, until you get to the bricks of the buildings outside. Uh, I mean, what struck me about this painting as well is how much like a film set it looks. He was really keen on going to the cinema. When he couldn't paint, he might go to the cinema. I think I read that he would go for a week. He'd be just going every evening to the cinema. And I don't think there were many films made in color in those days. So, and it was during the period of uh, those dramatic films, what they call it, film noir. These detectives and murder mysteries and things like that, and you get the sense of that out of his paintings. So I think film influenced him, and in turn, his paintings influenced a lot of of directors. I was watching a kind of an interview with I think three directors. I can't tell you which ones right at this moment, but all three of them sort of cited Hopper as influences in the way they set up scenes. And indeed, one of them said, if I can't think of anything to do, I'll go looking at Edward Hopper paintings to see what what at least isn't usually something comes to mind because of it. So it looks like the set of a film, and even further than that, to me, it kind of it looks like the set of a film that he's actually painted because there's so it's so sparse. It's almost like that a set has been cleared just to have the actors on the right hand side play their parts. And I always get the sense that you could go over to those buildings behind, walk behind them, and see a whole load of film extras sort of warming up, or people carrying ladders and buckets of paint and things like that. There's so little in it, and I'm going to go in sort of push in, I would say crop in on the photograph. Let me just see. Um, yeah, well, actually, here's some sketches. So it wasn't always exactly the same. You can see that on the left there, on the top left, you can see some initial sketches, just trying to set the scene. Some character drawings on the right there. But you can see in the fairly complete sketches in the middle, there's two of them, that one of them at the bottom is very cropped in. And it's kind of more sort of facing towards us, if as if he's moved off to the left. So we're not such a oblique angle to the scene. And the one at the top is closer to what it ends up as, but he actually sort of moves out and off to one side in the final painting. Now, he said that he didn't like to have drawings that were too complete. That was an interesting thing that I learned. He said, because I didn't want the final painting to end up like a copy of the drawing, which is an interesting thing to say, I think, from a painter's point of view, that's what he did. Because I look back on things that I do, and especially with the illustration work that I used to do, I'd want a fairly complete drawing before I went to color. Um, but I think as a fine artist, uh, you want to leave a lot more leeway for happy accidents, things to develop on their own. So let's see if I can crop it in on something more closer. Well, there's the sketch up close, pretty good, but it's not quite at the same angle. There isn't the same drama. Uh, we've actually sort of the camera has reversed a bit and gone off to one side for the final painting. But it's nicely finished sketch, isn't it? It looks like charcoal on paper, and it's mostly complete. The guy there, if you can see the second guy from the left, the guy who's sitting with the woman there, his hat is tipped back on his head. like a gumshoe detective from the film noir films, but it's not like that in the film. Everyone else seems to be more or less as they're going to appear in the final painting. So let's go in. Yeah, so here's a close up of the painting for the actual sort of the background of the painting. Those that row of shops and buildings, how sparse it is, how there's nobody else in it. There's no sign of life there at all, and even the shop has had all the contents removed from the front windows, which is kind of an odd thing because I don't know what it is. You can see the till there, can't you? But those shelves in the windows have been cleared, as if the building's almost gone up for sale or something. But I mean, it can't be the case. I mean, could it be a case of goods not being available because it's wartime? I don't think so. In America, they seem to have plenty of all the luxury goods all the way through the war. They weren't affected like we were in Europe. So there's nothing there. And I wonder what accounts for that. That makes it look more like a film, but it actually adds a kind of a mystery and lends a bit of psychological weight to what's going on. I think nobody in those rooms up above, the shutters halfway down. It's marvelous. So let's move in a little bit more. And now we come to the solitary figure on the left. I mean, that could be Hopper himself, couldn't it? Um, he wore a hat like that, but then again, everybody wore a hat like that. But it is a kind of a pensive mood, isn't it? That you can't see his face. He's tipped away towards us. His mug of what you would expect to be coffee there, it's sort of strangely cut off at the top left of the mug because his arm is raised, I suppose. Yes, you can see a shadow underneath his right arm. He's raised his arm and it's cut off. That's a bit of an awkward point in the painting, I think, because it isn't altogether clear where his elbow is at first. The gap between the lit area between the shadow and his elbow, isn't that clear, and there are a couple of tangents in there which seem odd to me. And but I expect with a painter of the quality of Hopper that it was intentional, maybe to make us feel a bit sort of unsettled, perhaps. He's got a newspaper there under his left arm, folded up newspaper, perhaps containing news of the war, which is not going well. So let's move on to the characters at the right. Here we are. Okay. I mean, look at that fellow on the left there, straight out of the 1940s. Even that lean, sort of haunted look about him. He looks like a detective, doesn't he? Cheeks like elbows, kind of that hook nose. And that's something about this painting that's worth mentioning as well, because it's called Nighthawks. And Josephine, wrote some notes about it. Now, quite why she'd have been writing the notes early on in the process, I'm not sure. But from her notes, and I'll read some of it from Wikipedia. She kept a journal. Uh, hmm, Both of them kept a journal in which he would, using a pencil, make a sketch drawing of each of his paintings, along with the precise description of certain technical details. Joe Hopper would then add additional information about the theme of the painting. That's really interesting. So it's almost like a collaborative effort. I've just read that. It's the first time I've read that part. And then this Wikipedia entry goes on to say, it's Wikipedia, so we'll just have to take their word for it, okay? Joe's handwritten notes about the painting give considerably more detail, including the possibility that the painting's title may have had its origins as a reference to the beak-shaped nose of the man at the bar, or that the appearance of one of the Nighthawks was tweaked in order to relate to the original meaning of the word. Now, a Nighthawk being somebody who can't sleep and sort of going around during the night, I suppose. And the notes read, night, plus brilliant interior of cheap restaurant, bright items, cherry wood counter, tops of surrounding stools, light on metal tanks at rear right, brilliant streak of jade green tiles 3/4 away across the canvas, at the base of the glass window, curving at the corner. Light walls, dull yellow ochre, door into kitchen right. Very good-looking blonde boy in white, coat, cap, inside counter. Girl in red blouse, brown hair, eating sandwich. Man Nighthawk in dark suit, steel grey hat, black badge. It's an awful lot of detail and interpretation being loaded onto an original idea. And it says here that they're Joe's handwritten notes. That's extraordinary, I think. And it actually lends a whole new layer to this painting for me. Other dark, uh, other figure, dark, sinister back at left. Light side walk outside, pale greenish. Darkish red brick houses opposite. Sign across top of restaurant. Dark, Phillies, 5-cent cigar. Picture of cigar. Outside of shop green. There's a lot of notes here. In January 1942, it goes on to say, Jo confirmed her preference for the name, which was changed. It was Nighthawks, two separate words, and then it became Nighthawks. And in a letter to Edward's sister, Marion, she wrote, Ed has just finished a very fine picture, a lunch counter at night with 3 figures. Nighthawks would be a fine name for it. Edward posed for the 2 men in a mirror, an eye for the girl. She was about a month and a half. He was about a month and a half working on it. Yeah, so that was the thing I was going to go on to say, that I didn't need to read that in order to know that that's Josephine, his wife, in the red dress there. So look at the flaming red hair. So because she appears in so many of Hopper's paintings. I don't. Who knows who posed for the chap at the right? The guy, the server. And I always kind of thought that that guy on the right. As soon as I heard that it was painted in 1941, that I thought he was in a naval outfit, but it isn't. They all kind of dressed like that in those days, didn't they? Sort of people serving in diners. But that's not to say that he didn't end up in the military. You can sense that's part of the whole scene, is that of all of the 3 men in that painting, that servo looks like he's going to end up in the armed forces fighting the Japanese or something. So that's that painting. Let's go. No, I'll go back to that in a moment. So, just taking another look at that painting now, it's like laden with a whole new set of meanings for me. Um, I mean, it's on my travels around the world of Hopper. I discovered that how infatuated he was with film. But Alfred Hitchcock modelled the famous house in Psycho from painted by Hopper, the house by the railroad, which he painted in 1925. And it says here that his art often alludes to cinema and film noir, and he's influenced people like Wim Wenders and David Lynch. So a huge influence in the world of film and generally in the world of art. And I came across another painting, which was painted in 1940, and you can see the same kind of how do you say, pensive drama going on. And I'll show that to you now. You caught a glimpse of it a moment ago. Let's have a look. Here we go. Yes, this one. Office at Night. This painted in 1940. And Hopper used to sort of travel on I think it was the A train in New York. And he'd be, I suppose, everyone was peering into windows in offices and homes along the way, but he formed a body of work out of that, and that fascinates me as well. Obviously, he can't have drawn them directly afterwards. He probably. I do wonder sometimes whether he used any photographic references at all, because it'd be quite sort of it'd be quite within his right to take a photographic reference as he passed by a particularly interesting window, uh, at night, peering in and seeing what was going on. Or just maybe he made it up. It's quite possible that he did that too. He was a good enough draftsman, wasn't he? But is another sort of picture, which in a way I kind of prefer to Nighthawks because there's something going to happen in this painting. Uh, it looks like a film noir scene. It looks like there's some skullduggery going on, or even some sexual indiscretion. It's quite sort of laden with with a sexual dynamic. I think there's that chap who's dominated by the woman on the left, who is sitting at his little desk, reading his dry sort of papers. But the look that she's casting over towards him, and the position of her body, it's not a natural position. It's quite strange actually, and you'd be hard put to actually get yourself into that position. Her body, the tension in between the upper part of her body, and the lower part is quite sort of I mean, but difficult to get into in a way. Yeah, they're turning two different ways. But what it does is it makes it look like there's something going to happen. She's making a decision or something to go over to him. Maybe there is sexual tension there, and he's sitting there sort of with this bombshell sort of standing next to him. So you don't know what's going to happen. I love it, and the preparatory sketches are good as well. So where are they? Do I have the sketches? Maybe I don't have the sketches there. Let me see. Let me just see if I can sort of push those in a wee bit. Oh, I did have them there, and I just sort of didn't put them in the right place. There. Okay. Yeah, so you can see in the sketches there that first of all, there wasn't even a second figure in there. It's just a woman standing at the filing cabinet, and I fancy, that. Let me get myself back up there. So, yeah. Oh, I'm in the way now. But I fancy that that was what he saw going by an open office window on the A train at night, seeing in this character standing at a filing cabinet, working alone, and he developed the whole story afterwards, the narrative value of that painting. So you can see in the second sketch that there is a man there, and maybe you won't be able to see who the details of that chap like you can in the painting, but he's an older man, and he's obviously sort of relating something to the secretary who's standing at the filing cabinet. So there's a different kind of dynamic going on there. As if she's listening attentively and getting on with her work. He's actually in the final painting removed that painting above the head as well, because I think there's a bit of a tangent going on there as well. The painting should either have been higher or lower, one of the two, but his head is touching it there, and I'd say that's why it was changed. But he changed far more dramatically that painting uh, to uh, to have this chap who isn't looking at the woman, uh, but she's very definitely looking at him. It's a fantastically painted figure of the woman as well, despite the strange stance. It's kind of weird. People don't. People don't think people turn like that necessarily. It's a very deliberate thing. But her skin tones and everything, and her skin tones are very pallid. A lot of Hopper's skin tones seem to be very pallid, and I don't know whether that's because of the paint, the red tones in the paint sort of becoming washed out over time, and it can't be because the flesh tones on her legs are perfectly fine. She's obviously sort of wearing stockings, and she's very white skin. Anyway, so I thought that was an interesting painting, which is actually very much like Nighthawks, and Nighthawks is a kind of a progression of a painting like this. There's many more of his paintings. You start looking at them, they are like psychological dramas going on. So let me just come back to me. Yeah. So I mean that's about as much as I can sort of extrapolate out of that painting between myself and whatever I found, that's related to it on the internet. I didn't want to go into too much detail because I'm not an art critic. I paint and I look at Hopper's paintings, and I I tried to see what I can get out of them and how they were done, um, rather than reading too much into them. What was that he said? There is a quote which I thought was good from Hopper's teacher, Robert Henri, which I was going to mention at the beginning. But Robert Henri, or Henry, said that it's not the subject that counts, but what you feel about it. And I think that that Hopper took that to heart, uh, and became his thing. His paintings are full of feelings, quite quite repressed feelings, and they got sort of lonelier and lonelier as he went on. He just enjoyed painting solitary figures, I think. So that's the end of my sort of little talk about this. I hope I brought a little something extra to you that you wouldn't normally get in, for example, the art class, even when you're here. Um, it wasn't exhaustive. Paintings are at their best when they make you feel something, and I believe that too. And what I feel isn't necessarily what you'll feel.